I'd like to introduce Director Carter for another introduction.
Thank you again, Chairman Teague. I'll ask our folks here, are we ready technically to go forward? We asked Dr. John Gassett, who's the Commissioner of the Department of Kentucky Fish and Wildlife Resources, to join us by telephone or video. He'd actually had planned to come down and be here personally, had a conflict that he could not change, so he agreed to be with us today by electronic means. And I think I'm going to step aside just for a second to make sure that hookup is there so that John can see us and we can see him. So.
There, I just don't know if he's... John, are you with us?
I am.
Did you want to get your camera up?
Should be, is it not?
It's not. There we go.
About now.
Perfect.
Well, thank you, John. You look just like yourself. So.
And I thought all those voices I was hearing was in my head. Glad to see some people there now.
Oh, just a bit of introduction. John is my counterpart in Kentucky. His official title there is commissioner as opposed to director, but he, through our associations, is used to answering to both, so I'm sure he wouldn't mind whatever one of those names you happen to call him by. When we were considering a Sandhill crane hunt 2 years ago, so was Kentucky. There were no other eastern states at that time that were that far along in working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to see if that was a possibility or not. As you very well are aware, Tennessee delayed for 2 years for some additional information and so forth. Kentucky now has finished their second year of a season on Sandhill cranes up there. And I asked John if he could share some of his insight, and I gave him a list of questions that I thought that would be of interest to the commission and to the audience that we have here today that he might want to comment on. He's certainly not limited to those, and he also, by the way of we're set up here, is available to take questions directly from the commissioners or from the audience. So just a little bit about John. His role is not only in the Southeast or in Kentucky. He's just 2 years ago was president of the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, which is our national organization, represented us both internationally and throughout the United States. And where I think I'm busy sometimes because I'm working a lot with the Southeastern Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, John's also chairs several committees there, as in another regional association because of the virtue of just geographically where Kentucky lies. It's been a great ally to us in thinking things back and forth. We have a lot of reciprocal agreements between the two agencies, both in fisheries and wildlife, and work a lot of things on the national basis together. So, John, I appreciate very much you being here today, and I'll step by and turn it by to Commissioner Teague to go through the rest of the presentation, and I'll leave it again to you. I did furnish John some questions, so if you want him to address those, we can start there.
That'll be fine. John?
John, are you still there?
Yeah, I can hear you, Ed.
Okay. I know y'all are still working on getting running water, but.
Yeah, I heard your introduction. I was waiting for your chairman. I was unsure whether he had any opening comments or not. I didn't want to step on him.
He said he was fine with you to go ahead with those questions that I submitted to you, or any other thing that you wanted to cover first.
Let me just give you kind of a general thought from after hearing Mark Duda's presentation, and then what we've gone through in Kentucky over the last couple of years. First of all, I think Mark did and we've worked with him a number of times on various projects. He always does outstanding work, and I think this case is no exception. You have some of the best, looks like, social data probably out there on sandhill crane hunting right now, based on his survey. We saw a lot of similar things. We didn't do a full-blown public opinion survey like y'all had done, but judging from the comments and questions that came up during the process, and it was over a year-long process for us to make happen. What we saw, I think, is very reflective of what you're seeing in Mr. Duda's survey. So I don't think there's a lot of difference. He's exactly right when it comes to the public attitudes towards hunting, both for sustenance or versus trophies. He's exactly right when it comes to hunting attitudes on more common things or more perceptually common things like deer and turkeys versus what some people might consider more exotic. And if you've been following the news lately, there's several examples out there of very controversially hunted species right now that are just coming to the forefront. And one example are of course the wolves in both the Great Lakes states and the Yellowstone ecosystem, which have been delisted, and states have hunt plans and that sort of thing to help regulate those populations. If you think Sandhill crane hunting is controversial, put some wolves in your state and then try to open a season and see what happens. I think you'll find that it's a whole different can of worms. But things like doves, bears, wolves, panthers, all those things, even though science supports sustainable hunting, the hunting public supports it, you still have a large group of folks out there that either non-hunters or anti-hunters that are against it. And in Kentucky, we saw that with our Sandhill crane proposal. We saw a strong support from both organized and individual hunters. Organized hunters, I know y'all have the Tennessee Wildlife Federation down there, and my good friend Mike Butler runs that. We have our counterpart up here is the League of Kentucky Sportsmen, and they came out in full support of a crane season in Kentucky and really helped to move it through the process, both at our commission level and subsequently through the legislature. A number of our other sporting groups like Ducks Unlimited, Pheasants and Quail Forever, several others like that, the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation even, all of these groups came out in strong support of a crane season in Kentucky because, number one, the science is there. Number two, it is a huntable species. It is a hunted species, a game species, under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. It's been hunted for more than 50 years across this country. Their thoughts are it's nothing new here. It's another opportunity for sportsmen and women. If the populations support it, then we should give that opportunity to the people who want to take advantage of it. It was controversial in Kentucky. I'll tell you this: at the risk of receiving another barrage of letters and emails into my office, it is less controversial now. We see just every now and then we'll get a letter that someone's not happy about it, but for the most part, we see and we do post-hunt surveys of our hunters, and they are strongly appreciative and supportive of having that opportunity. And it's a very limited opportunity in Kentucky, so we don't let everybody that wants to get out there and go hunt a Sandhill crane. It's a quota system and a check-in system, and it's very tightly controlled. But it does give folks limited opportunity for that exposure. Some of these people have traveled out west before and hunted cranes in the upper Midwest and the western states, but a lot of them hadn't. A lot of them, this is their first time, and we do see that reflected in our success rate. So, but they're spending on average a lot of time in the field for the number of days we give them, because I think it is new and it is exciting and it is challenging. And we are seeing that our wildlife watchers, at least as far as we can tell, and we have actually biologists that go out and survey these same areas where the wildlife watchers tend to congregate. What we're seeing there is that since our season's open, the number of birds on those areas has tended to increase significantly. We have two major areas that get viewed heavily. One's the Cecilia area around E-Town, which is pretty much geographically center of the state. The number of birds that are viewed there have increased by threefold over the last 2 years. Now, I'm not directly attributing that to hunting. I attribute that more to the growth in the population as a whole of this eastern subpopulation that we're talking about. But the fact is, there are more birds there for wildlife watchers to see than there ever have been. If you look at the Barren River Wildlife Management Area, another popular viewing area, the number of birds there in the last 2 years has gone up by a factor of 2.5. So we think these two things can coexist, much like, I guess what you're proposing is the Hiwassee location, where I know you have a crane festival. I know you have lots of intensive wildlife viewing. So, but I think there is room for a hunt. We've seen that it did work here. We carved out a couple of areas and put those off limits to make sure that the not only did the birds have a sanctuary and a resting area where they didn't get pressure, but also that the wildlife viewers could get to and use those areas in case hunters tended to disturb them a little bit. But we also scheduled our season sort of outside the main migration periods, basically on the fringe of the migration periods, which still gave hunters opportunity, but the bulk of the migration happens more during the viewing period versus the hunting period. So, I can talk all day about cranes and what the opposition looked like and how it changed, and there were a lot of dynamics that happened. We had great conversations with the Audubon societies here in Kentucky. We had great conversations with the ornithological folks here. 99 times out of 100, we're on the same side as a lot of those folks. This was one that just to be honest with you, when we sat down with them at one point, I said, well, if 400 cranes is too many to hunt, let's compromise on the number. Tell me what number works. And I couldn't get a number, and finally I threw out a number. I said, well, what if we just say we're going to have one crane permit? And they told me that was too many. And at that point, I knew that this was not a situation that we were going to reach consensus on. And we are a user-funded agency here in Kentucky, much like y'all are, I'm sure. Our bills are paid for by the people who buy hunting and fishing licenses and register boats, and we're responsive to those people. So, we move forward with the season. We've seen no impact. The population has gone from when we started the season. The eastern population has gone from 50,000 animals to 87, almost 88,000 animals in the eastern subpopulation. So, the few birds that we're taking are not having a biological impact. People don't even see hunters on the landscape. They're out there, but they're at a time of the year when there's not a lot of other folks out there messing around. Maybe a farmer or two might see one, but largely they're invisible. They're not having an impact, but they are greatly appreciative of the fact that we've offered them this opportunity, and we were glad to do it for them and plan to continue it. So, Ed, I won't go on unless you want me to, but if you want to, probably a response to questions may get you a little more what you're looking for.
Thank you, John. I'll just turn to Commissioner Teague.
Thank you very much. That was a great presentation, very informative. Does anyone from the commission have a question for? Go ahead.
I do, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, thank you for joining us today. You probably, I can't see myself, so you may not be able to see me, but you're not missing anything. But I'm curious how many birds you've harvested in Kentucky over the last 2 seasons, and how that compares to the number of permits that you've issued.
We have, we make available up to 400 permits. We had 332 applicants that were qualified to receive permits last year, which was exactly the same number we had in 2011. Although there were some different people, just one of those just quirks that the same number of people applied, but there was a different group of people slightly. They still have to go through concerning, and I meant to mention this earlier, concerning the misidentification possibility of Sandhill versus whooping cranes. First, I'd like to point out that for those of you that are hunters, especially if you're waterfowl hunters, hunters differentiate very well between what they're supposed to shoot and what they're not supposed to shoot. And migratory waterfowl are arguably a lot tougher to discriminate against, and hunters do that very well. So, but we still put them through a pre-hunt test. They go through a training experience online to make sure they know the difference between a sandhill crane, a whooping crane, and a great blue heron. Not only that, but that they also look at, sort of shoot, don't shoot opportunities. So, not shooting into flocks of birds, not shooting into birds under low light conditions and those sorts of things. So that being said, we do a little training with our hunters, and they have to pass that pre-hunt test first. So we end up with about 285 people or so that actually went through and took the test and then went hunting. This past year, I think we killed 92 birds. Averaged 4.7 days in the field compared to 4.25 days in the field in 2011. And in 2011, we took, I'm trying to remember the number off the top of my head, 50. We took 50 birds in 2011. So, very small numbers, but still a significant amount of hunter opportunity. To give you a comparison, that's not that different from the number of bear hunters I have in the state in a lot of cases. So, which is another fledgling hunted population that we have here.
Dr. Gassett, I appreciate it also that you taking the time to talk to us. I had a couple of questions. When you said you had, you said 332 applicants, and then you had 200 and, I forgot you said it took the test. Did each one of them only have one permit, or did they have multiple permits?
They have 2 tags per hunter.
Okay, all right, so you
Yeah.
had 2, all right. And then,
And we could draw up to 400 hunters.
okay, so you had, how many did the federal allow you, like 1,200 permits?
Now, quota of 400 birds, but we draw 400 hunters, 2 tags per, under the assumption that success rate wouldn't be 100%. As a matter of fact, under the assumption that it wouldn't even be 50%. But we also had a check-in system, a phone check-in system, so each day as those birds came in, we kept a running total, and we could shut the season down if, for whatever reason, if every hunter got into birds, we could shut that season down when we hit our quota of 400.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. I think as a hunter, and all of us up here are hunters, it's not necessarily taking the bird, it's just the experience to get to try. And I think that's, I know you said your success rate, you only had 90 this year, or 92, but the experience of letting that many people even pursue them was probably a thrill for all of them.
I agree completely, and I was one of those ones fortunate enough to get to try it once, and we saw nothing but clear blue sky, but just the opportunity to be back out in a blind and enjoying nature. That's, for those of us who are passionate about hunting, we know that's 99% of what we enjoy. So,
Thank you.
Commissioner Stout?
Yes, sir. Dr. Gassett, did it cause any increased burden on your agency as far as personnel or resources? Was it a distraction? Did it take away from other events and opportunities and activities of your agency?
the working through the process, it did transiently take up the time of my migratory bird coordinator and my migratory bird biologist. So basically two staff time as we were going through the process, trying to respond to questions or comments, trying to develop the regulations, trying to put out Q&As, questions and answers on the website so that people knew why we were doing what we were doing or why we were proposing it. That did take up some very transient time. Of course, once it's established, once the telecheck system, which we've had for years for deer, turkey, elk, and other species, was already there, it was simply a matter of adding cranes to that list. So yeah, it's a very minimal input on our part now. Now that it's functional, the bulk of the time was taken up in trying to address people's concerns, going to public meetings, which we went to a number of public meetings, both committee meetings like you're in now, commission meetings, but also public meetings across the state to talk about wildlife issues in general and sandhill cranes in particular. So, we just basically we put our investment in up front, but then once we rolled it out, it's taken very little staff time or resources.
What about the training classes to be able to identify the crane in lieu of other crane species? So.
Yes, that's an online course that we did in-house, and I put that in part of that transitional process. It basically, we spent a little bit of time building that, which we would obviously, and we'd be happy to make it available to Tennessee or any other state that's considering this, so as to not have to start from scratch. But it's once it's built and it's out there, it doesn't require a lot of care and feeding.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cox?
Dr. Gassett, did you have an application fee or a separate permit fee for the Sandhills, or just your typical hunting license?
It's a $3 fee, which is the same as for our quota hunts for deer hunts. Basically, just a processing fee.
Is it non-refundable application fee, or is it just a success fee?
No, it's a non-refundable application fee.
Okay.
Mr. Gadsden, when did you say the bulk of the migration period was through Kentucky?
It occurs, and I'm a trained biologist, but I've been riding a desk as a commissioner for over 8 years now. So I believe it occurs subsequent to our season. So January, late January, early February. We end the season prior to that bulk of that migration happening. And of course, migrations will shift, temporarily too, as weather conditions and those sorts of things will affect when those birds migrate. But in general, we're hunting them prior to the peak of the migration.
How many days do y'all hunt?
I believe it's a 60-day season. Oh, a 30-day season. I'm sorry. I actually got my waterfowl coordinator here with me, so he can slap me on the back of the head if I say something wrong. But and we went through the same process that I know you have gone through or are going through with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the flyways, the flyway councils. It's a federally protected bird, so we have to have. They basically establish the framework for how many days we can hunt.
How many days did they recommend for them?
I'm sorry?
How many days did they recommend for your season?
Well,
your maximum.
Yeah, they provided the 60 days was the maximum, and we basically cut that down to 30.
Okay, thank you.
So we're trying to be very conservative, in the initial stages to see what the results were. With a fairly small limit, a fairly small quota, we wanted to be as conservative as possible.
You think you'll go up to 60 next year?
Oh no, probably not. What we did is we said we would do a 3-year experimental hunt and evaluated it each year just to see how it was progressing. So we'll put another year of hunting under our belt, and then my folks will take a close look at the data and see whether we can provide any opportunity for expansion or whether we need to maintain the status quo.
Commissioner Cannon?
Commissioner, thank you for doing this today. Director Carter was supposed to tell you that you were welcome to have a lifeline, but it sounds like you've got one beside you, so that's great, in your waterfowl coordinator. Just a quick question. Going back to genesis of your program and looking at where you are right now, are there any lessons learned that you would advise us on if we go forward with this?
Well, I think the big one is I don't think you can over-communicate with the public, both your hunting public and your opposition. Mr. Duda showed you earlier that there are sort of touchstones out there that may change somebody's opinion on whether or not they support hunting. And while he found some of those, there probably are other ones out there. I can tell you one that was very popular with us, or a very misconception that was popular in Kentucky, and that was that, the only reason we want to kill these things is because we want to hang them on the wall. They're no good to eat, and all we want to do, hunters want to blast them out of the sky and hang them on the wall. Well, if you've ever eaten one, they're excellent table fare. They call them ribeyes in the sky. They're great to eat. They're incredibly wary and incredibly challenging. That was another misconception we had, is that people who go on vacation in Florida and see that resident population of cranes down there that will literally walk up to your car and eat out of your hand. That's what they envisioned the Sandhill crane was. I can tell you in Kentucky that if you're a mile away and you bump your headlights accidentally on your truck in the morning, they all leave. They're incredibly wary, incredibly smart, and very tasty. And when we explained that to people, we did have folks that said, even non-hunters that said, well, we didn't know that. We thought you're just trophy hunting these birds. So you can't over communicate with the public. We went statewide with a number of meetings. We had 9 public meetings across the state where we talked about Sandhill cranes. We had 4 committee and or commission meetings. Plus we had public hearings that resulted from those proposed regulations passing those commission meetings. So there were probably more than 15 opportunities for the public to come to us at either a regional location or a central location and discuss the opportunity there and air their grievances and for us to respond to them. So, I would encourage communicating as much as possible. You need strong hunter support. I would tell you right now, if you didn't have strong hunter support behind this, if we hadn't had, I wouldn't have even considered it. But the hunters and anglers in Kentucky pay our bills, and they pay for the majority of conservation in Kentucky, and that's been true for more than 75 years, and we're very responsive to that, to provide those hunters and anglers with additional opportunity when we can. So I would just encourage you to communicate as much as possible with all the groups that are interested, and try to put a plan together that kind of gets right down the middle. It doesn't, you won't get right there, but you can get close. We reduced our season significantly, the length of our season, even though the hunters didn't really, they probably wanted a longer season, more tags and everything that every hunter always wants. But, we compromised there. The one place we wouldn't compromise is, as long as the science supported it, is that we shouldn't even consider a hunting season for them. We kind of set that one aside and said that's not on the table for us.
I got one more question, Chairman T. I'm sorry, Mr. Rice, go ahead.
Is your draw a computer draw?
It is.
All right, sir.
All of our,
Is that
I'm sorry?
available to non-resident as well?
Yes, it is. And all of our draws in Kentucky are computerized. So to the question earlier about the cost of maintaining the system, adding it to our computerized draw that we already have for deer and for elk and other species, basically there's an economy of scale there. So, but yeah, it is available to non-residents.
All right. Are you allowed to hunt all day, or do you shut off before the end of the day?
We have defined hunting hours. I believe it's 30 minutes after sunset, and then it goes to, I'm looking at my wildlife coordinator now, it goes to sunrise to sunset.
Thank you.
Yes, was there any correlation as far as your license sales? Did you see an increase of when you opened up this season?
Of overall license sales?
Yes.
No, not as directly related to this, but bear in mind we had a lot of other things going on at the same time. We have seen an uptick in license sales slightly. Now, we were on a slight downward trend, as many states were, but in the last 5 years, several states have seen that trend to flatten out a little bit, and we've seen the same pattern. But we've increased our elk draw to 1,000 tags. We opened bear season in a number of counties. We've expanded opportunity on a lot of other seasons, and we've been getting a lot of publicity on our deer and turkey flocks and our elk herd over the past few years. So I wouldn't say that any change in hunter license numbers would be attributed specifically to Sandhill crane season, no.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gasket, is it a statewide season?
It's a statewide season with several areas that we have that we put kind of off limits as refuge areas. So the two areas I mentioned are the Cecilia area. I'm sorry, the Barren River Wildlife Management Area. We have 3 coves in the Barren River Wildlife Management Area, which are loafing areas for these birds. We know they like to hang out there, and to be honest with you, we didn't want to disturb them everywhere they like to hang out. So we did put some limits on or some restrictions on certain areas.
Commissioner, have you had any whooping cranes killed in error during your hunts?
No, sir. We've had several come through the state this past year, and part of our hunt plan is that as soon as whooping cranes are identified in the state, we do a press release both locally and statewide that lets people know that they're here. Basically, if it's during the Sandhill crane season, we try to get the information out there as quickly as possible to the hunters so that they know to be looking for them, and what areas they're likely to be in. But no, we've had no whooping cranes killed in Kentucky.
I'd like to say, Dr. Gotts, that you've been very, very helpful, and it's interesting to see that the trouble you went to communicate with your bird watchers and your hunters, and you can be proud of putting together a good program, and I'm sure that you're very aware of trying to prevent any accidents like with the whooping crane and all, and I think that what y'all did is very commendable, and we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, and it's been very helpful.
Well, thank you. I appreciate y'all having me.
Well, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Before we let you go, I would like to ask if anybody else from the audience has a question or something they'd like to ask Commissioner Gassett. Okay, it doesn't look like it. Go ahead, you can finish.
We just thank you very much. I got ahead of myself, but I do appreciate you taking the time to do that. It's been very helpful.
Well, thank y'all.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you, Ed. Appreciate it. And if y'all need anything, give me a shout.
Will do. See you later.
Thank you.
going, before we continue on with our next part of the program with Mr. Anderson, I'd like to take a break. Let's give us, let's break till 2:30.